Recently, we saw a video on TikTok.
Reason number 2 that people leave the Mormon church.
Because a lot of times what people are going to do, they're going to cherry pick the information, Bible verses, historical accounts that fit and go towards their desired end.
It's not a matter of if they're going to come across these critical ideas. It's a matter of when. And as us as parents, as grandparents, are we going to be able to give a sufficient faith-filled answer? Or are we going to be blindsided, and then that's going to be bad for everyone involved?
Dude, we need to get more clickbaity, bro.
Yeah, for sure.
If we're going to fully dive into this YouTuber thing, we got to get super clickbaity.
Yeah. Do you want to know the 3 ways that you can find out whether the Book of Mormon's true and make a passive income?
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Is the Book of Mormon actually just an explanation on how to gain an extra $500 a month?
At the end of this video, you're gonna know how to make $5,000 passive from just reading the Book of Mormon.
Anyway, so we'll go into our intro now. Welcome to the Stick of Joseph YouTube channel. If you're here for the first time, welcome. Usually it's not just me and Hayden. A lot of times we have very interesting guests on that are far more educated and cool than me and Hayden. However, we also feel like we have maybe some things to offer that could be of value. And this
We'll let
week,
you be the judge of that.
Exactly. Please be the judge of that in the comments. We love the comments. And so we didn't have an interviewee set up for this week, and so we had a subject that has kind of been weighing on our minds and that we wanted to talk about. We didn't have a big structure on it, and so we just both kind of prepared some thoughts, and we're going to talk about it a little. Do you want to kind of...
Yeah, let's dive into it. So
Okay.
I think one thing that we've tried to do on this channel, and I hope you guys have felt it, is we're trying to provide multiple perspectives on the same subjects, right? So we've talked about Book of Mormon geography, we've talked about translation of the Book of Mormon.
We've had multiple evangelicals on that can I give their naturalistic points of view of how the Book of Mormon came to be and stuff like that.
Yeah, so we're not trying to have this be a propaganda machine for any one side,
Or
right?
just an echo chamber.
Or an echo chamber
of our thoughts.
And so and the reason why we're doing this is because, you know, as many of you have maybe experienced, both of us have experienced points in our lives where we started to dive into all of the things that are critical towards the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, towards the Book of Mormon, towards Joseph Smith. And this was a time where we really had to work out our own salvation or beliefs through fear and trembling, to use a New Testament phrase. And we learned a few lessons doing this. And there may be more lessons that any of you guys would share and could share that may be better, but this is what we have learned. And so let's kind of start it off with a metaphor that we came up with from our Marine Corps training, Jack, if you want to share that.
Yeah, though we don't talk about it a lot, I know you don't forget because of our chiseled jaws, bulging muscles, and
dad bod. That means I'm a reservist.
And our strikingly good haircuts. But anyways, we are in the Marine Corps. I have the privilege of being what's called a Marine Corps marksmanship, basically instructor.
No, it's not that. It's a Marine Corps combat marksmanship instructor.
Okay,
You
cool.
don't even know what you are.
I act like I know what I'm talking about when it comes to pulling the trigger. And one of the things that we teach is a lot of times in close quarter shooting, like I'd say maybe 100 yards and in, 50 yards and in, especially when it's really close, like 25 yards and in, is to keep both eyes open while shooting. Now, the purpose of doing this is to not get sucked into what is just in your little glass, but that you can have a full vision of the different threats and targets around you. And we really enforce this because we don't want to get sucked into what we can just see through one of our eyes, because that's going to cause us to lose sight of the whole battlefield and everything that's happening. And so we kind of want to talk about how using this approach, keeping both eyes open or shooting with both eyes open, in terms of looking into things critical towards the Book of Mormon, things for the Book of Mormon, will help you to come out with kind of a full view and in the end, hopefully find truth.
So if any of you are like me, who have grown up in the church, and you come across critical content on the Book of Mormon or on anything to have to do with the church. So for example, a big one is the CES letter. I read the CES letter for the first time in 2017, I think. And I was home from my mission, I was working, and I was like, what is the CES letter that I've heard about? I start reading it, and I read it like for 3 days. It took me about 3 days because I had work and stuff. But all of my free time was spent thinking about the CES letter, reading the CES letter, and at the end I was like, crap. This is all false.
Right. 3 days straight, I bet you were like...
I was like, my whole mission, everything that I believed, like it was wrong, you know? And
Yeah.
it wasn't that, it was shocking though.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting there and trying to take it all in, and I had this realization, I hadn't read my scriptures for 3 days. I hadn't done these other things for 3 days. Now, some people would say that, oh, that's because all of that stuff is just brainwashing. It's what brainwashes you in. So you have to separate yourself completely from that. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times what we will think is like, oh, I've grown up in the church. I already know that story. I already know what's in the Book of Mormon. I know who Joseph Smith is. So I need to just read it from this perspective. But we forget that as human beings, we are very adaptable to our environment. And a perfect example of that is actually our missions. Like, think about how long you had to be in the MTC before you forgot how to be a normal person. Like, it wasn't that long. And then when you get home from your mission, you're like, I'm going to keep all of my habits and everything. And then you get into a different environment, and within, a couple weeks or even sooner sometimes, you start to lose these habits that you wanted to keep.
Yeah, you gotta find a way to adjust a little bit.
And so I guess what I'm saying is, don't fall into the trap of thinking, oh, I already know what the church says about church history. I already know what the church says about the Book of Mormon. I'm just going to now spend all of my time looking into one side. I'm going to close this eye and I'm just going to look through my new target with my scope. And if you do that, you will have a hampered view and you will not be able to see the full picture.
Well, to be fair, if all you have grown up with is pro-LDS stuff, when you read anything critical towards it, it's new and
interesting.
It's super interesting because it's a completely different perspective than a lot of people grow up with, right? And I was having a conversation recently with someone I respect greatly and is far wiser than me. And so when they said this, I kind of had to think really critically about it. They're like, why do you look at or watch anything critical towards the church, like Mormon stories, or read all this stuff that's critical towards the church? Like, if that was something that was necessary for us to do, the brethren would tell us to do that. And I kind of stopped and thought about it. I'm like, yeah, why? Like, but then I've thought about the product that has become of me looking at all this stuff is I am way more conscious in my belief, and I feel like I can critically think a lot better when it comes to spiritual matters, because I look at the rebuttals of people that are saying that everything's fake, everything's, just a naturalistic creation of Joseph Smith's mind. And then I can look at how a lot of things don't match up in their explanations and how there's actually a huge, gaping, giant garage door left open for faith. Okay? At the end of the day, we've gotten a ton of emails from people that have fallen away from the church, and they admit as well that there is a big room for faith. And what's hard is that a lot of these people that are against the church and make critical content is they do an amazing job at presenting their case as if it is closed door factual. The Book of Mormon is false. The LDS church is nothing but a fraud. When in reality, if you look into those things a lot deeper and keep both eyes open, you can see that, no, actually, there's a lot of conjecture in there that they just move it towards that conclusion.
Yeah, and going back to what your friend said about if the brethren wanted us to do that, they would tell us to do it. And, I'm one of those people that I don't think that the brethren or any church leader tells us exactly everything that we need to do. And we had a conversation with a friend recently, and I used to have a podcast that was specifically on the subject of overcoming pornography. And one thing that I learned by talking to dozens, like hundreds of people and parents and children, is that the days of saying, hey, we need to keep our kids from pornography are gone. There's no such thing as keeping your kid from pornography anymore. And so it's a fool's errand to think that we can ignore the idea of pornography and just filter it out of our homes and keep our kids from it.
It's gone more from like an if to like a when.
When. Yeah, when are they going to see pornography? And then proactively having conversations with our children so that when they see pornography, they can come and talk to us. And then also thinking about, oh, how are we going to respond when our children say, I saw porn or I looked up porn or whatever, right? I see it similarly to ideas that are critical towards the beliefs in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's not a matter of if they're going to come across these critical ideas. It's a matter of when. And as us as parents, as grandparents, are we going to be able to give a sufficient faith-filled answer? Or are we going to be blindsided, and then that's going to be bad for everyone involved?
Yeah.
And so the way I look at it is we can passively go through and try to avoid anything that might shatter our faith, or we can move forward into these controversial questions and ask them ourselves, and through the help of the Spirit and looking at both sides, gain insight on the truth of the matter.
Yeah, because going back to what you were saying about the CES letter, it presents the information in such a factual, matter-of-fact way, like that you're like, you walk away, like you said, you're like, this is all false.
Yeah.
And when, if you were to keep both eyes open and see what the actual, information and truth is at hand, then it's a whole different story. And one of those, just one example, in the CES letter, it kind of talks about similarities between Book of Mormon geographic places that are listed in the Book of Mormon, and then towns and cities that were, existing at the time of Joseph Smith.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. And so he gives this list of like 17 total name places that supposedly existed at the time of Joseph Smith, and where things that are exact the same or similar in the Book of Mormon show up in the Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
And when you read that, you're like, oh my gosh, Joseph Smith just freaking copied stuff that he looked up on a map, that he had around.
Yeah.
When if you were to actually research and look into these names and places and when they actually came about, you would find that nine of those 17 places that Jeremy Reynolds lists did not even exist at the time of the Book of Mormon, but actually after 1830, okay? And someone that's just coming across this and is looking at this information is gonna be like, oh my gosh, like Joseph Smith just copied this. When in reality, the information has been presented in a twisted way to promote a false narrative, honestly. And so I'm not saying that there's no credence to any of the claims put out into the CS letter, because there's a lot of things that I still haven't found answers for.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things. And however, I have not found a single thing that shuts the door on faith, that shuts the door on faith.
For sure. And I think another thing to point out is he talks about, and this happens a lot of times with people who are critical of the church, is they talk about like the one, like the smoking gun, right? The X that marks the spot. So look at 17. Now forget, let's say those 17 were all like direct copies and there wasn't the 9 of them didn't exist or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Look at the fact that there's 377 unique names in the Book of Mormon, or 377 names in the Book of Mormon, and like 180 something of them are unique names in the Book of Mormon. So you take that 377 names, you're like, okay, 17 of them are copied from another place. Where did he come up with the other 96 or 95% of the names? You know what I mean? And so it's like, is it really the smoking gun that they claim it to be? And it's similar too with like the 32 anachronisms or whatever in the Book of Mormon. It's like they point, look at these 32 things that we know never existed because archaeologists have never found anything on it. But then they don't talk about the 170 that have throughout the years slowly been disproven.
Yeah.
And so that's the importance of, like, if you close your one eye and you just focus on the one target in front of you, the 32 or the 17, then you don't see the full picture, and it takes it out of context. And it's similar to like when you hold a quarter in front of your eye in front of the sun. It's like, is the quarter bigger than the sun? It's like, obviously not. But when you're focused on it and its closeness and proximity to your eye makes it seem like it's bigger than the sun.
Spiritual eclipses, bro.
Boom.
I read that talk too.
Oh, is that a talk?
Dude, don't even.
I'm dead serious. Whoever did that, I endorse your talk.
Anyways, we'll leave a link in the description. Because a lot of times what people are going to do, they're going to cherry pick the information, Bible versus historical, accounts that fit and go towards their desired end, right? And I was talking to one of my evangelical buddies the other day, and he was talking about how the LDS Church, put so much emphasis on reading, pondering, and praying, and listening to, the good feelings in your heart. When we read in Jeremiah such and such that the heart is deceitful above all things, and how you can't really trust your feelings, but you just have to trust the word of God. And I'm like, okay, but then if you look at all these verses like James 1:5, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, or when Jesus Christ says multiple times, asking you shall receive, knocking it shall be opened unto you. And then in Galatians, we read about what are the fruits of the Spirit. And when we read, ponder, and pray about things, like we can discern and have those, truths be revealed to us through the scriptures. And so ultimately, we have to look at both sides. We have to keep both eyes open. And I really think at the end of that, we will see the gaping door of faith and either choose to believe or, choose to walk away.
Yeah. So in an attempt to do this, because even right then, we took the rebuttal from Jim Bennett, right? And we talked about, how he has those 17, 9 of those 17 didn't exist. We don't know that because we haven't done the research ourselves.
I did on one of them.
You did one of them?
I did on one of them.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
the Rama Indian Reservation.
Okay, cool.
It wasn't existing until 1836.
Okay, cool. So you did on one of them, but we didn't do it on the rest of them, right?
Yeah.
And so in an effort to rectify that and to do it for ourselves, we're going to start going through the CES letter, and we're going to start doing the heaviest research that we can and presenting them as transparently as possible to you guys. And if the claims in the CES letter still hold true, then we're going to say, yeah, from what we've seen, Jeremy Runnels is right about this. The CES letter is correct about this. This is an issue. But if not, then we're going to present that as well, and we're going to show you why that's not the case. And so to kind of start off, one of the things that we've been interested in doing is recently we saw a video on TikTok or on Instagram. I think it was originally TikTok, I don't know. But here, watch this video.
Reason number 2 that people leave the Mormon Church.
Hey John, I hope you don't mind, but I'd like to push back on some of the claims that you make here.
Did you know that 7 years before the Book of Mormon was published, a book called View of the Hebrews was published that is suspiciously similar to the Book of Mormon? How so? It claimed to be a long-lost book buried by Indian forefathers.
No it didn't.
It begins by discussing the destruction of Jerusalem, the scattering of Israel, and the Jews coming to America from Israel to populate the land.
That's actually not how View of the Hebrews begins. And it explicitly states that the inhabitants are not Jewish.
Includes mention of Egyptian hieroglyphics, breastplates, and a Urim and Thummim.
Okay, did you just say that? There is no mention of brass plates. And the only thing that remotely resembles a Urim and Thummim is an obscure account in which a wise man straps a conch shell with a white button made of buck's horn.
It even includes a story of a man standing on a wall warning people.
Yes, but it was actually an account from Josephus and occurred in Jerusalem in 70 AD, not in the Americas.
It includes Jesus visiting the Americas.
Okay, John, I think we have a problem here. And I want to say this with as much respect as possible. You've never read View of the Hebrews. Here's the thing. View of the Hebrews doesn't even come close to claiming that Jesus Christ visited the ancient Americas. Furthermore, you clearly haven't read B.H. Roberts' work on this topic. Because if you had, you'd have realized that it's B.H. Roberts that goes out of his way to try to draw a connection between these ancient Mesoamerican accounts and the Old World Messiah. It's Roberts that uses the word Messiah, not Ethan Smith in View of the Hebrews.
That's a perfect situation what we're talking about. So you have John DeLynn on one end and the CES letter and Jeremy Runnels saying, View of the Hebrews, look at all these things that are copied straight from there. And then you have this guy on the other hand who's like, looks like they haven't read the View of the Hebrews because it doesn't say this, 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 and this. And then it could be really easy for us to side with him, right? And just be like, see, he read it. but like we haven't read it. He could just be making it all up, right?
Yeah.
And so one thing we're going to do, we're going to sit down and in one sitting, we're going to read the full view of the Hebrews with the CES letter. And we're going to see if the claims that are made in the CES letter actually match up to there. And we're going to share that with you. And we're going to try to be as transparent as possible. But at the end of the day, we don't want you to do what we're preaching against right now, which is just take our words for it. Read View of the Hebrews for yourself. You know what I mean?
If it's an issue for you, and there's a lot of people that
They don't care.
talk to, there's like, I don't care, and you know, it's not for me to look into all that stuff. And whatever, I'm not gonna argue and tell you you need to look into all this stuff. For me, I found it super beneficial and faith bolstering to go in and kind of figure out why I believe the things I believe because of the poor rebuttals that are presented, in my opinion. Okay, now that's just my opinion. And so we have found it super beneficial. And so we see, even through our comments as well, that we see a lot of people, you know, throwing out the same, you know, copy and paste things from ex-Mormon Reddit and things about the View of the Hebrews and other CS stuff. And so we see it as something that will be beneficial to provide rational answers to things that are critical towards the Book of Mormon and other LDS beliefs.
So as we always end our episodes with the catchphrase, stay curious and hungry, we really, really mean it this time. Be curious, be hungry, search after answers to questions, and we believe and we've experienced for ourselves that God stands there ready to give to those who ask. And so we appreciate you guys watching, and we appreciate you guys sharing our videos, and we hope that you leave comments, you like, that you, if you haven't yet, subscribe to our channel, and until next time. I hope you guys said it out loud right there. I hope you guys said it out loud right there.
All right. Anyways, we'll see you later.